Thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight I am joined by Thomas Greffley, Jennifer Meyer, and Max Knight, and we're going to be talking about The Dichotomy of Leadership, the book that we've been reading so far in our clinical experience class in the Doctorate in Athletic Training program. We're all second-year students, and so we're just going to dive right into the conversation. So as we discuss the dichotomy of leadership, the first thing we're going to talk about is just how we have seen this, basically the relevance of this book to our clinical practice, or how others can maybe benefit either personally or professionally in our lives. So we'll just kind of start from there and see where the conversation leads us.
Perfect. Yeah, so I guess applying this to my clinical practice as an AT, one of the second chapter, Own It All, but Empower Others. I mean, I can relate this a lot with trying to, take ownership of like a patient's like rehab protocol, or, trying to get them in, trying to explain why it's so important, but they have to kind of find it in themselves, like this is what I'm supposed to be doing, this will help me. So just trying to own like my mistakes with, I guess, not advocating enough, like, hey, like this is why you need to come in, this would be really great. But yeah, you guys kind of get the gist of where I'm going with that.
What are some ways that you empower them or get them to buy into the program?
So it's more of like I guess right now, I mean, there are a couple patients I'm working with where they've had, I guess, repeat injuries, like the same injury just every other weekend for the past 2 weekends, I guess, mainly just from games. So they're more just feeling sore. Maybe range of motion is limited a little bit, so it's more of kind of like, hey, just so we can stay on top of this, like it'd be great for you to come in and do these few things. It'll take like 5-10 minutes tops. So yeah, because they're so structured in their day where you need to be careful of, I guess, taking them away from their normal routine, I guess. So, and you don't want to overbear them as well. I think I'm getting into another dichotomy here. Resolute, but not overbearing. Yeah. What are you guys' thoughts?
I think it all plays together. I think there's a lot of lessons that I've taken away from the book. I think specifically the last couple chapters, but more so the last chapter that we just read about being disciplined but not rigid. I think that just applies to athletic training as a whole. And I think that honestly, one of the biggest takeaways that I've gotten from the DIT so far, and not to belittle anything else that I've gained from the DIT, but one of the biggest things is a systematic approach. And so I want to have a systematic approach to what I'm doing, but I also want to have some movement and some fluidity throughout my day, of that I can be adaptable to whatever may be thrown my way. And I think that's huge for just like even today when I think about, okay, I got instructions from a physician on how to progress a patient or do something along those lines. They don't see them every day. They don't know how they're going to change. So it's in our hands to make sure that this does stay within the realm, but also not too rigid, that there's no progress or there's just no benefits that we're seeing because of being too rigid or just following the plan too closely. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I've seen so far within the book that's applied specifically to how I feel from the last year and a half of coursework. So.
Yeah, and I think kind of going off that one, like you get that a lot with patient-centered care because, yeah, you might have a way to do it for each patient, but each patient is different. So you have to then be able to change it depending on their individual needs. So just finding that moderation and that balance of doing what they need, but not deviating too much from the like standard operating procedures, because you don't want to do everyone's so different that you can't even compare people, or that they're not getting the same level of care either.
Mhm. Thomas, what is your biggest lesson that you've gained from the book so far?
I think the biggest thing is when I think that almost, I don't know, there's a bunch. I literally wrote down notes on everything, like having like a systematic approach. I wrote like being aggressive and not reckless. Like I feel like this is like going through like the DAT. I feel like we learn all this stuff and everybody's like, oh, I want to implement this. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And it's like, yeah, like be aggressive, but like you can't just be reckless. You can't just do something to do it. And I think that kind of goes into chapter 5 where it's train hard but train smart. So having a reason behind everything that you're doing and having that solid why behind every single aspect of whether it's your evaluation, whether it's an implementation of something, just always having that reason behind exactly what you're doing and training in a smart way versus just doing something to do it because you know that it's what you should be doing.
Yeah, that's something I actually realized today, where like the past year, whenever I'm like discussing anything with like another athletic trainer or um, a coach colleague, I'm always thinking and like asking them questions like why, or explaining how, or like what we can do through whatever, like a solution or something, or if they're trying to like just walk through something, it's like those three things, like why, how, and what, kind of always pop in my mind. So just to understand the purpose and of something and what's going to go into getting whatever goal or whatever it is that need to be accomplished.
Have any of you recommended this book or Extreme Ownership to another colleague or AT student or someone you've been working with?
Yes.
We talk a lot about this with our strength and conditioning coach because he actually read it like 20 years ago. He read it when the first came out, the first one, and I keep telling him like he needs to read this one, like because I love it so far. So I'm trying to get him to read it.
Yeah, I have too. Like I think the only barrier I think to this is, like I don't know. I guess referring people to the book that need it or are ready for it. Because I mean, like we're all like willingness and open to change and being better, but just talking about this book, like it may even be like so like scary to some people, like oh, this is like a big thing, or you sound cocky about talking about this book or whatever, or I don't need to be a better leader, just like things like that. So just like for me, I need to make sure, like if I talk about this book, like yeah, like I'm interested in it, it's really cool, but not to press it on people who may not.
That's my thing, Max, because I have a advisor that I feel would benefit greatly from this based on just some experiences with them. And I feel like, especially with extreme ownership, like there's been times that I'm like, this didn't go well because of this specific chapter. I'm like, I just want to give them that chapter to be like, read this, and this will benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, and I think it's having that conversation too of like why you're wanting them to read it. So I know that would be a little bit more difficult when you're like, oh, you would really benefit from this, like because you did this yesterday. Like,
Right.
Here, take this chapter from me right now, versus like getting it proactively to them. The only person I've recommended it to a couple of people. I've recommended it to my dad because he's read a lot of leadership books for business side of things. And then a colleague right now, one of our first year graduate assistants that I actually work very closely with. And I recommended it to him. And it's funny, he's already done the whole come to work and say, oh, Tara, I'm taking ownership of this today. And I'm like, you don't have to say it. I get it. Like, I have read the book too. So it's funny to see the first transition period. But it is awesome when you have two people that kind of are working together and have learned the same lessons from the book and then get to bounce ideas off of each other. And not that you're constantly at a battle for who's right or who has to take the blame or the ownership of the situation. It's like, how can we actually work together and like resolve the issue and like both take ownership of each of our parts versus one always taking ownership. And so I think that's a huge benefit I've seen too from recommending it.
I also think it's interesting because in the book he also talks about when like the people have read extreme ownership already and they like totally buy into some of the themes, and then you have to kind of understand exactly like, oh wow, like I totally bought into this theme, but like you're having like blinders on then, and you're gonna miss out on some other aspects of it, and like and then other dichotomies end up popping up.
Going off of like the buy-in thing, like I've definitely considered this a mindset for sure. Because this, like, for me personally, this has changed like the way I see things and like see myself and see others. And so it's kind of been difficult to be like, okay, I'm in this mindset. I'm trying to act this way. Like, why aren't you trying to do the same thing?
Mhm.
And like, I want to know your guys' thoughts on this because after reading Extreme Ownership, I've been thinking about, okay, how do I embody this, but not preach it, but just let it rub off on others, you know? Because I really want to like get in someone's face and like, hey, you need to own this like now. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to judge you or anything, but just own it, move on. I'll not be better, but that's rude.
I think that like that goes back to your first point, Max, of empowering them. Like you have to get them to understand the importance of it.
Right.
Explain your why. Why do you want them to own it the way you're owning it? Or maybe communicate with them of why they should be doing something that you think, like, this is why I do this every day this way. And, like, maybe if they understand why you're doing it, instead of just being like, Max is a weirdo, he always does this every day.
Right.
They might understand, like, oh, that's helpful. Like, he does this because it helps with this kind of thing.
And
Start with why, Simon Sinek.
There we go. Like, I'm also coming from a standpoint too of like I want to let these principles and things rub off on students that are coming through my clinical side as well, just to help them grow personally and professionally as well. So, you know, it's just, I don't want to overcomplicate things and, you know, give mixed messages. Like, oh, this guy's awful. So, but
I don't think they
I
will
don't
get
know.
that.
Yeah, this is me overthinking, but
You gotta incorporate, like, I don't know, like pick like a topic a week or something that applicable.
Well, I think too is that when you talked about it, like, how do I want to embody it? That's exactly what it is. It's embodying the characteristics and not forcing it upon them. And if you do want to have a conversation, then it's exactly what Jenny said, of like explaining the why. But I think it's a huge thing of making sure to take a step back and really think about what you're doing in the situation.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're doing it wrong, but like, you want to call someone out and say you need to take ownership, but are you taking ownership? Are you doing the things that you need to do, and are you in the gray area that we're learning in the dichotomy of leadership, that you're not too far one way or too far the other way, that you're actually leading them down a wrong path? And I'm not saying that you're doing it, but I think that's the biggest takeaway that I got from last year, and then going into this year with the book, of some fears I had going in. I had a lot of the second years last year just straight up be like, you need to take ownership of everything. And I was like, no, I don't. I really don't. Like, you need to take ownership, and this isn't the time to take ownership, kind of a thing. So it's like finding that good balance.
Right.
But
awesome.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
any other thoughts?
I didn't mean to mic drop on that one.
No,
but does anyone have any last thoughts?
Got the soapbox out. Yeah. Anything else, guys?
No.
Perfect.
Great combo.
Yeah, great combo.
Everyone.
See you guys later.
Goodbye.